because this past weekend I saw that the front page of Barron's had a big quantum computing article on it. The article talked about how quantum computing is going to change the game for just about everything, but also how it's still very early in the revolution. With it being so early, can you give us a quick rundown on quantum computing, what it is, why you're excited, and what the investments are?
Yeah, so quantum computing is one of those things that is, it is going to be the biggest technological revolution of our lifetimes, but it's so early, it's tough to understand or see where the industry is going to go in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The basics of it are, there are two rules of the world, scientific rules of the world. There are classical rules, which are the rules that we abide by, you and me as people and dogs and pretty much all animate objects abide by. And then there's a different set of rules for subatomic particles. So the smallest things in the world, how do they live? What rules do they abide by? The subatomic particles that make up you and me. And they abide by a completely different set of rules called quantum rules or quantum mechanics. And those rules are almost superhuman, almost like it's like they have superpowers, so to speak. So the two big things here are entanglement and superpositioning. And entanglement is this, or superpositioning, so easier to explain first, is this idea that subatomic particles can exist in multiple places at once until they're observed, right? So classical mechanics, the rules you and I abide by, I can only be here with you on this podcast or in Baltimore with you. I can't be in both places at once. I can only be in one place at one time. In quantum mechanics, subatomic particles can actually exist in multiple places at once until they're observed. And this is the whole thing about Schrodinger's cat, right? You don't know if the cat is alive or dead until you open the box, and you open the box and you find out it's alive or dead. But when you close the box, the cat can simultaneously be both alive and dead. Totally weird, totally magical, superstitious. Like, it's just weird, right? But it's true. And this is something that scientists have tried to explain for decades and decades and decades and decades. And even about 100 years ago, it stumped Einstein. So this is a really complex concept. And if you're thinking about what I'm saying, you're like, this guy is talking hocus pocus. It sounds like I'm talking hocus pocus, but it's true. It's scientific fact that subatomic particles can exist in multiple places at once until they are observed. That's called superpositioning. And then entanglement is this idea that, okay, these subatomic particles, they can't exist in multiple places at once until they're observed. Well, all of those states depend on one another and can work together. They become entangled. So you can have one subatomic particle exist in 5 different states. Another subatomic particle exists in 5 different states. Well, these states then are dependent upon these states, which are dependent upon these states. So you create this whole entangled network of all of these subatomic particles in their theoretical states. And that's the idea of entanglement. So with superpositioning and entanglement, the way I like to think of it is, okay, you can, in classical mechanics, there is a Superman. And that Superman there's only one Superman, and he can fight crime in only one city and one time, one crime, one city. That's it. In quantum mechanic world, you have multiple supermen that are fighting crime all over the world and many different cities fighting many different crimes all at once. In the classical mechanics world, you still have crime everywhere because there's only one Superman. In the quantum mechanics world, you don't have crime anywhere because Superman is solving every crime everywhere all at once. There's multiple of him all working together. That analogy, I think, is the best way to frame the jump from classical computers to quantum computers. Classical computers are built using one Superman. They have bits that can be either 1 or 0, and that's how we store information, how they do work. And so they can do tasks, they can act like Superman, but it's only one Superman. With a quantum computer, you have qubits, which can store information as both 1s and 0s, and they can work with other qubits. And you have a bunch of supermen working together to solve some problem. So obviously the computational power of a computer built on quantum mechanics, a quantum computer, is exponentially greater than the computational power of a classical computer. And so for the past decade, 15, 20 years actually, scientists, technologists, companies have been trying to figure out, okay, how do we harness the power of quantum mechanics to make quantum computers that we can control and that can actually do things that a classical computer would take hundreds, thousands of years to do or could never even ever do? That research is now coming to a head where we are starting to get a first iteration of usable quantum computers that are solving real world tasks, such as cybersecurity, such as uh, synthetic biology, DNA synthesis, such as electric vehicles. So, electric vehicles is one of the biggest applications of quantum computing right now. That a lot of the science behind electric vehicles and battery chemistry is simulation to figure out, okay, what chemistries work best to create a battery. That simulation works significantly better if you have a quantum computer doing it because it has way more computational power. So you can run infinitely more simulations on an electric vehicle battery and different battery chemistries to come up with better battery chemistries. And also, even there's a company, what was the company that just signed up with IBM? I don't know, it was 2 weeks ago, a company signed up with IBM to use quantum computers to simulate battery chemistries to not just create better batteries, but actually maybe manufacture lithium or manufacture a lithium substitute. So as opposed to mining lithium, we can actually create lithium out of more abundant stuff. So this is the sort of stuff quantum computing can unlock. And a lot of people have said it's going to be bigger than the discovery of fire, as big as the discovery of the wheel. And I believe that's fundamentally true because the entire world is built on computers. We are having this conversation through computers. Everybody's listening to this conversation through computers. When we trade stocks now, we trade them through computers. When we analyze them on computers. When we talk to our friends, we talk to our friends through computers. When we watch entertainment, we watch entertainment through computers. Everything is through computers these days, or computations. And when you change that computation from classical bleh, to quantum rar, all of a sudden you fundamentally change everything. And that's a transition we are starting to undergo, but it's a transition that's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's a transition that's going to take a very, very long time. So the winners of the quantum computing revolution, or the quantum revolution as I like to call it, will be huge winners, but they're going to take time to bake. Okay. This cake is not going to happen overnight, and you need to be patient. There are some quantum stocks out there right now: IonQ, Arqit Quantum, Rigetti Computing, D-Wave. There are some out there right now. If you're going to be invested in those, you have to be invested with significant patience, on the understanding this is a stock that's not going to blow off anytime soon, but in 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, could be about 100 times higher than where it is today. So that's a philosophy you have to take with quantum computing. What I would do is I would get in those quantum computing stocks and I'd say, okay, this is money I don't need for 10 years. I'll put a little bit away, I'll stow it there, and I'll see what happens in 10 years. I think that's the approach you have to take with quantum computing at this point in time.
And I'm assuming that there's also a scenario where these companies today are merely just paving the way for the better companies down the line in that timeline, correct?
Yeah, entirely so. Entirely so. I think there is definitely all the companies that are out there today in quantum computing are not going to exist forever. But I think one thing that's a little bit different, that's a little bit more nuanced, is quantum computing is, the science is so complex. So what the head start these companies have is a defensible head start. If a company today is building workable, usable quantum computers, that's a defensible head start. And that company will probably be around for a long time, so long as it secures the funding to be around. Because, again, like I said, the science is so complex. And if you figure it out, if you crack the nut and you're just working on the scaling problem right now, you're light years ahead of everybody else. So that's one thing I will say about these early first movers is I do think they have a first mover advantage, that it's very defensible.
All right. Well, thanks for watching HGI Clips. For the full episode, head on over to our sister channel at Hypergrowth Investing by clicking the link in the description, or listen to the podcast on any of your favorite streaming platforms. We make new episodes every Wednesday, so make sure to check it out and subscribe to never miss any of Luke's Hypergrowth insights.